Easter is getting closer and closer, and I still haven't made all the Easter cards that I want to give away. Do you feel the same way? In this video, I'll show you how I made 15 individual Easter cards very quickly and easily. I'll show you my little tricks to make my life easier when I'm making cards, and everything looks still really nice. Here in the introduction you can already see the cards we're going to make together. The vintage atmosphere of the paper has also extended to my cards, which I really like. My name is Julia, and I'm an enthusiastic card maker and paper crafter from Austria. Welcome to my channel, Julie's Kreativschatzkiste. My first trick is to work with card sketches. Today I'm working with Kendra's card challenge number 13, which is a challenge where Kendra provides 15 card sketches for free every quarter. And you can make these sketches with 6 sheets of 6x6 inch patterned paper. You can find all the details about the challenge in the description box and in other videos on my channel. If you take part, you can also win great prizes. Today I'm working with this paper from Ideen mit Herz. It's a double-sided vintage Easter paper, and one side has this beautiful big large patterns and graphics, and the other side, the back side, is rather neutral and relatively monochrome. The good thing about this paper is that I can use one side for the cards and the focus points, and the back side fits perfectly as matting layer and decoration. So I have actually a double use for this paper, which is another trick. A very important trick is to be well prepared. I've already cut out my paper here according to the sketches from Kendra, and I've also already cut out my matting layers and prepared my blank cards. I've sorted all these papers into my bags, which are numbered according to the sketch numbers 1 to 15. If you want to see the cutting in more detail, I can only recommend you Kendra's YouTube channel, Cards by Kendra, where Kendra is showing everything in detail in a video. The link is in my description box as well. Good preparation also means that I've chosen a few dies beforehand that I might want to use. On the one hand, they fit well with the Easter theme, and on the other hand, they also fit well with the vintage style. I have also picked out a few Easter sentiments. In the end, I will only use one of them, this one from Tonic. And I now cut this sentiment, as well as the shadow of the sentiment, out of white paper. I don't know which colors I will need yet, but I can always color the white paper, and so I have a few sentiments that I can use straight away. That's another trick. Here you can briefly see the cutting plans that Kendra also provides. As I said, these are made for 6x6 inch patterned paper. My paper is actually 8x8 inch. But I didn't just reduce my paper from 8 to 8 but to 6x6 and then followed the cutting plan exactly. Rather, I made it more flexible. I followed the dimensions of the individual paper shapes as given in the cutting plan, but I did not adhere to the exact placement and position according to the cutting plan. This gave me more flexibility to use these large images and graphics that are built into the pattern of my papers. And then I placed the larger papers according to the cutting plan, exactly where there is an image or a graphic on my paper which I would like to use later as a focal point in my card. But now enough with the preparation, let's get started with our card sketch number 1. This sketch has a large patterned paper that I've cut here with a green matting layer. In the sketch there is a diamond made out of white paper in the middle, which you can decorate with a sentiment. But if I did put such a diamond on my card, I would cover up my beautiful bunny, so I decided just to leave it out. Instead, I just used the thin strips in the sketch to build a window for my bunny, using the same paper for it as the matting layer. I also used this light green background paper as a shadow for my sentiment. And for more dimension strength for the sentiment, I also use a white background behind the green paper. The sentiment now goes in the upper right corner of the card sketch because there's still space there. And then I decorate the card with Nuvo Vintage Drops Ivory Buff. And that's actually the first card finished. Let's move on to the second card. The second sketch consists of 3 components. There is this background, which is actually white on the sketch, but I used the matting layer here in pink. Then there is this elongated strip in the blue background paper, which I have also matted. And then there's this diamond in the middle. Here I benefit again from these beautiful pictures and graphics in the paper, because I used this pretty flower as the center of my card. Just before that you saw me shortening the blank card a little. That's because the sketches are designed for the American A2 format, which is a bit shorter than our A6 European format. For some of the sketches you simply can use A6 cards, for others it looks a bit strange if there's too much margin at the top and the bottom of the card, so I just shortened some of the cards. On this card I cut out the sentiment shadow again from the same blue paper, which appears on the card, and then I left my Happy Easter, my Frohe Ostern, white. I stuck it on a little off the side so you can see the pretty flowers in the center. And then I have a transparent glitter pen that makes the white sentiment sparkle a bit. And of course there have to be a few Nuvo drops as well. And the next card is ready. Card sketch number 3 is quickly assembled. There's a white matting layer with 2 design paper strips on the right and the left hand, and a large square in the middle. In the sketch it actually says you can design your own scene here, and I created my scene with using a green background paper, and then I cut out this Easter scene from a die from Sizzix out of white paper, and I just stick it onto my matting layer in green. For me, that's another trick to make it easy for yourself. If the patterned paper you use is already very colorful and has lots of patterns on it, then it's enough to cut out the dies and the decoration out of white paper. So you don't have to put much effort into coloring it. And I think it still looks very beautiful. With this sketch it's also worth mentioning that the paper in the middle, the square, hangs out a little bit in the air at the top and the bottom. And that is why I stuck 2 strips of paper here to compensate for the difference in height. This time I used pink Nuvo drops for the flowers on the trees. At first I didn't quite know where to put my sentiment. In the end I just hid it in the bunny scene, and that's how I finished my card. For the next card, for which I used sketch number 4, I cannot say much. Here I used the pictures on my paper again, and I have 3 different papers with matting layers and a sentiment in the middle. I have these squares placed differently on my card than on the sketch, just so that you can see the pictures on my papers nicely. The 3rd square is actually intended as a white square in the sketch, so for creating your own scene, but I have just used some background paper and placed my Happy Easter on it, which fits perfectly. That's card number 4 finished. Cards number 5 and 6 I'm now doing together. They both contain these rectangles that have been divided through their diagonals into 4 parts. I cut these rectangles out together so that the cards are congruent and there are no gaps here. Here another trick is that you fix the triangles with tape on the backside or washi tape before sticking them onto the card or the matting layer, so nothing can move when you stick them on. And that's how I do it with both cards. For the circles drawn in the middle, I picked out 2 dies and then cut out these shapes out of white paper. In order to have the appropriate contrast, this time of course the Happy Easter has to be cut out of the background paper in blue. To get a bit of dimension on the card, I attach this oval with foam tape. On the other card I directly glue these flowers onto the card, and for the circle in the middle I use foam tape to raise it a bit. I used my shimmer pen and my Nuvo drops on almost every card in this video, so I won't mention them anymore because I just don't want to bore you. Sketch number 7 looks a little bit complicated, but it's really not. It's just several layers on top of each other, and because of the beautiful pattern in my paper, I don't actually have to do much more than add the sentiment and the card is finished. The shadow of my sentiment is cut out of cream white paper, and the sentiment itself is cut out from orange paper that I've also used for my matting layer on this card. Here in this card there's a height difference again in the papers, which I compensate for with the small strips of paper. And that's card 7 finished. Sketch number 8 has again such a white surface that you can decorate yourself. I use a stencil for that came with a Tonic magazine. I first used tape to cover the upper part, because this is a butterfly I want to color later in a different color. I'll now start with the flowers, and I use my distress oxides, always in 2 tones, a lighter and a darker one, to get deeper colors. The colors I chose roughly matched the colors in the card, so I used green, yellow and orange tones. Decorating a card panel with a stencil and distress oxides is actually very quick and it looks very nice, don't you think? It fits my card perfectly. For my sentiment I tried to use the same colors as for the panel, so dark green and orange, but in the end I didn't like the orange because it just didn't really go with the look of the other cards. So I changed my mind here and simply put a creamy white Happy Easter over the orange one. For card sketch number 9 there are these 2 strips on the left side, and then there's a grey area in the sketch. For this grey area I decided to use an embossing folder, so I embossed some swirls, colored with tattered rose, into this card panel. Then I cut off the upper and the lower part of the panel so it fit my card perfectly. Then I made a mistake, because I actually wanted to use these small diagonal stripes on the pink large vertical strip, but for whatever reason I stuck it onto the patterned paper. Luckily everything came off easily and I correct that here. I then glued the embossed panel and the beautiful blue patterned paper directly onto the card, and I attached the strip in the middle with foam tape. With the sentiment, that's finished, and I have to say this is one of my favorite cards from today. For sketch number 10, I had to change the orientation of the sketch, because the image I want to use is horizontal, so the card also must be horizontal. The second thing I changed is that I simply left out the quarter circle which is mentioned in the sketch, because it would have covered up my focus image. Otherwise I stuck everything on the card as intended in the sketch. And there's something I also want to mention. In the beginning there were some papers which I really didn't like that much as large sheets. Used in the pattern, cut up and incorporated into the sketch with the other papers in combination, I really like them, all of them actually. And this I saw again for sketch number 11, which has many papers that partially overlap each other, but overall the combination of all the papers looks really great. In this sketch I made a small change again. The larger of the two middle papers is actually intended to be at the bottom of the sketch and the smaller one on top. But I just wanted my focus image, this cute chick, to be at the top of the card. So I simply swapped these two papers, and of course my sentiment also slipped further down. And this is what the finished decorated card number 11 looks like. When cutting the parts for sketch number 12, I again took care that I have nice images on my papers. There was a problem with the direction of the pattern for the chick on the bottom, but that doesn't matter actually, because I just cover it up with my sentiment. The sentiment then also replaces the white circle that is mentioned in the sketch. And I still had so many white Happy Easters left, so I just now glued two on top of each other for a bit of dimension. And then I also used foam tape for sticking on the sentiment to my card. And that's number 12 ready. I put a little bit more effort into card number 13. First I arranged the papers with the matting layers and glued them in place on my card. Then in the sketch there is a semicircle on the left side. For this I picked out a Tonic die that has this half circle, and then there's also this floral pattern die that is not cut out completely from the paper, but it only cuts into the paper, so the flowers stick out a bit. It looks very nice and it just fits perfectly. And this is card number 13 finished. Sketch number 14 again has a white background built into the sketch that you can decorate yourself. I decided not to do much about it, but simply take a large piece of background paper as a base. And I have a white paper for matting the diagonal strips that are provided in the sketch to get a contrast into the sketch. An important tip that I learned from practice: stick these horizontal stripes on before you glue the matting layer onto the blank card, because then you can cut off the strips easily. For the circle in the middle, I used this flower wreath again, which I have also used before. Only this time I cut it out twice and I glued it on top of each other, so that I have a little bit more depth in the card. The circle in the middle, on which I also glued my sentiment, is stuck to the card with foam tape again. And this is number 14 finished. And we're coming to the last card, number 15. For this sketch I'm going to use this large picture in my patterned paper again. This beautiful girl in a pretty dress makes a great focal point for my card. I used foam tape again for my sentiment, and this time I applied pink Nuvo drops and used my glitter pen again. So card number 15 is also finished, and that's actually it for today. We made 15 individual Easter cards that look really nice and actually didn't take that much effort. I hope there were some tricks helpful for you as well. How do you make a lot of cards quickly? Maybe you also want to try Kendra's card challenge? I would be happy about that. Please leave me a comment or subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, if you liked the video. See you next time. Servus!